one.
Is that Boogie? Well, damn it.
Many months later.
Corridor 23. Yes, that's 4, I'll get a 28 from one truck when you're ready. One truck, White Lincoln X-ray 985, should come back up heading. From one truck, White Lincoln X-ray 985, should come back up heading.
Toyota 2000, Patrick Spalding. Toyota 2000.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Tuju Panda back in action. We're talking about something else today. By something else, yes, it's going to be drama related. However, it's also going to be something that goes beyond the furry fandom. Yeah, in the online internet world, there is no shortage of controversy and, various other things that sort of just happen. And more recently, a event that's sort of a carryover from, I believe, September 2020, sort of came to light. Somebody was arrested for some indecent activity that they had engaged in the public eye. I say this insofar as the fact that there was a weapon that was discharged into the air as a warning shot. Big no-no, because in an area where you're living in a residential district and there happens to be a school about a mile away, less than a mile away from your current home, yeah, people don't really like that sort of thing. However, it's not exactly as cut and dry as I try to make it out to seem. Would all of you happen to know a guy named Boogie? Boogie2988, I believe. I've just always known him as Boogie. I've only watched his content a couple times, and I have to say, he's an interesting fella. He's kind of gone downhill in more recent years, but when I first learned of him, it was actually when Gamergate was a thing. And I'm not going to go into the whole history behind Gamergate. I'm going to assume that most of you probably know at least a little bit, or are fully aware of what Gamergate was, but basically it was a weird time in the gaming world where various key figures like Anita Sarkeesian and Boogie and various other internet personalities were at the forefront of this ongoing controversy surrounding the gaming community. And, well, Boogie, the most defining memory I have of him is Anita Sarkeesian sort of lecturing him and shutting him down when he was sort of giving a press conference with all of the big names. But Anita Sarkeesian, as far as I'm aware, she's kind of become irrelevant these days. I haven't heard nor hide nor hair of her. I'm not sure if she's still beating her chest and trying to go about all the whole gamers are gamers are misogynists and that females need more representation in gaming. Something that I can broadly agree with, but the way that she went about basically sexualizing everything as far as gender goes, that's something I didn't exactly agree with. But, Boogie happened to be somebody that I always found to be, he's like your older brother who's kind of nerdy, but for the most part, harmless, fun to be around. Always had something to say, always had a joke to crack. My favorite image of him was him being dropped out of the same airplane that dropped the Fat Man on Hiroshima during like World War II. Instead of the bomb, you just see Boogie being dropped from the airplane, and that was like a defining image in my head. But yeah, like he's appeared in a couple things. I remember he was talking about how like the price of healthcare was going up because of Obamacare. And I think he was for Obamacare at the time as part of his skit. Basically, he was like intentionally making the least healthiest cocktail, where he was like dumping Doritos and like various other things into a blender and like making himself some sort of like a soupy cocktail to drink. And he kept saying, "Somebody gotta pay! Somebody gotta pay!" And, you know, that was sort of like, he was just taking the piss at the time, but, you know, he was doing this exaggerated act, like, you know, for the entertainment and hilarity of the internet. So yeah, that was just sort of the mental image that I got from him. However, in more recent years, he's been steeped in controversy and drama. Like, for instance, he was accused of being a racist because, you know, he made a passing comment when somebody donated to his channel, and the person that donated to him happened to be African American. And he said something like, "Oh, that's a lot of money, I guess, for somebody that's colored." Something like that. It's like my memories are a little bit fuzzy right now because, you know, Boogie, I don't say that I take him for granted, but he's always just sort of been there, and he's been, like, you know, online throughout the internet. But ever since the controversies began, like, they just seem to go one after the other, and, you know, like, his content, I can't tell if it's sort of like, you know, it's stayed relatively the same and my perceptions have changed, or if, like, you know, he's become increasingly more deranged, because my perception of him, he's becoming increasingly more deranged. He's definitely, you know, deteriorated a little bit mentally and to some degree physically, although, you know, in the picture that I showcased, like, in the beginning, if I didn't, I'm going to showcase it either now or at the end of the video. Yeah, he's alright. He's not doing the greatest, obviously, right now, if you all know what happened, but he's doing alright physically. I mean, he's lost a lot of weight. He's looking pretty good for his age. Not quite the strapping young man that he used to be, but, you know, somebody that looks like he's in an alright bill of health. Alright, so the latest and greatest controversy that kind of came to a head last year during September is that there's been this guy, Frank Hassel. I'm not sure if you know who he is. I want to call him Frank Zappa, but I know that's not his last name. Frank Hassel, he had a YouTube channel, and like the cornerstone of his particular brand of content was that he thanked some people, and, you know, they got increasingly more bizarre, like, you know, to get a reaction out of people, but was he harmful? Certainly annoying, but I don't, like, really consider him to be, you know, as malicious as he could have been. Granted, he kind of towed the line between controversial and, you know, over the top. So it certainly wasn't for everybody. Like, I certainly wouldn't endorse, like, a lot of his activities. But, you know, that's how it goes sometimes, you know. It's not for everybody. Everybody's particular channel, their particular content, their particular brand, it's all got a desired audience that either they accumulate over a span of years or they get recent notice for, and that happens to be their new brand name. Okay, fair enough. He and Boogie had this, like, long-standing internet feud, in which case Frank Hassel routinely harassed and, like, you know, sort of dogged, you know, Boogie online. If you're wondering why, Frank had the belief that Boogie had something to do with his channel getting, you know, terminated. At least that was the original, like, cause of their, you know, ongoing back and forths. It got to the point where Keemstar actually stepped in to interview both of them, and Boogie, no joke, he was just like, "Dude, if you ever step on my property, I am going to kill you, and I'm going to take great pleasure in it." You know, something to that effect. And it's just like, whoa, dude. I was not expecting that to come out of Boogie's mouth, but I guess that shows you, like, the extent by which Boogie's mind had, like, you know, he was probably stressed out. He was really sick and tired of dealing with this Frank Hassel person. So the story goes that Boogie underhandedly, like, not underhandedly, but he indirectly sort of invited Frank to his house to, like, settle things, or, you know, made, like, an offhand threat. And Frank actually did call him up on this. He actually showed up to Boogie's house and was, like, pulling his usual shenanigans. Now, here's the problem. This is where things get a little murky. The entire thing was recorded, and several pictures sort of appeared online that, like, you know, have been making the rounds of Boogie holding a gun. He actually stepped out with a gun. He fired into the air a warning shot and, you know, basically warned Frank to back off. And I have to say, like, the internet's reaction to this was largely sympathetic towards Boogie. A lot of people actually, you know, sympathized with Boogie in spite of everything. They thought that, you know, to be fair, he was on his property and Frank was doing things that were kind of malicious and threatening, but it's hard to tell, like, where the line is between, because we don't see, like, you know, Frank at any point in the video. He's the one, like, shooting this, like, video. All we see is Boogie, and he's holding a gun. And I have to say, he looks pretty good holding a gun, you know, in his doorway. Certainly not exactly James Bond material, but, you know, I could certainly give him credence for, like, having a loaded weapon and being ready to use it. The fact that he shot it in the air to give a warning shot, like, I guess this is independent of the law. This is purely my opinion. I feel like that shows that he didn't want to shoot Frank. So, like, you know, he shot in the air just to make him back off. He probably wanted to scare him off and, you know, just get him to back off. That's just purely my opinion. But in the eyes of the law, you're discharging a weapon. If you're discharging a weapon and, like, if the person that's coming, like, quote-unquote, coming after you, like, you see it sufficient to fire a warning shot instead of just shooting the attacker, that shows that you're in a position where you're not, like, in harm's way. You're not in direct danger of whatever the attacker might be doing. That and the fact that, like, you know, Boogie, you know, he obviously came out onto the porch, so he was with a gun. He was sort of looking for action. So, you know, there was reasonable... Basically, what you're supposed to do in that sort of situation is you're supposed to keep the door closed and call the police and let them take care of it. I know that more recently, throughout most of the community, like, a lot of people don't really take the police seriously, but they're there for a reason. You know, they're there for upholding the law and making sure that people don't get hurt and to enforce the law as they see fit. Whether or not they're doing a good job at that, that's for you to decide. Obviously, especially in the furry fandom right now, a lot of people are anti-cop, anti-law enforcement. They feel like the cops are incompetent or just a bunch of fucking, you know, very violent individuals that should not be celebrated or respected and need to be, in some cases, abolished. But, you know, that's not a discussion for this video. But yeah, like, basically, this happened over, like, almost a year ago. Well, you know, like, back in 2020, September. And so it only came out yesterday that there was a warrant out for Boogie's arrest in light of all this, and that Boogie actually turned himself in. You know, he didn't really put up a fight. He didn't try to evade capture or anything like that. He just, you know, here I am, whatever. And he's been described as being calm and collected throughout the proceedings, although his picture looks very not good. You know, I guess if I was arrested, I probably wouldn't look the best, but, you know, it just increases my, like, sympathy for Boogie. And maybe he doesn't want my sympathy, but I have to say, like, he's a very sympathetic figure right now. You know, he never showcased any malicious tendencies or, like, you know, any harmful opinions or, like, anything that was truly egregious. And a lot of people wanted him to get the help that he needed as far as his anxieties and mental, like, issues, I suppose. So what's going to happen now? Well, that really depends on the prosecutor who actually, like, you know, went out of their way to try to arrest Boogie. A lot of people cried foul, like, all throughout social media. They really felt that whoever this prosecutor was must have been anti-gun, or they wanted to make an example out of Boogie, or they had some sort of political agenda to showcase Boogie as their token example of, you know, whatever cause or, you know, whatever they were trying to pull off. But fact of the matter remains that Boogie is a fairly well-known figure, and he made a lot of, you know, a lot of noise on social media and also YouTube for his presence there online. And he was sort of a key figure throughout the community. Obviously, more recently, he's been steeped in controversy and problematic events and opinions, but, you know, his all-time legacy happens to be that guy that, like, you know, gave some fairly good content to YouTube, and for him to be suddenly arrested and, you know, facing legal charges for admittedly a very, like, legally gray, murky situation, you know, it's just surprising, you know. Usually YouTubers don't seem to be arrested, although it certainly, you know, breaks headlines when they do. I say usually, I'm not saying it never happened before. It happens a little bit more regularly than you would expect, but not so much that, you know, your favorite YouTubers, like, go away for a long time because of some bullshit that they do. Unless your name's Logan Paul, in which case the FBI fucking raided that guy's home. So, I don't know. I don't know whatever came to that. I never really looked into it, but I was just sort of like, okay. Anyway, so Boogie. Yeah, let's hope he at least gets off with a slap on the wrist. If not, well, I hope you guys prepare your emails and snail mail and send them to whatever correctional facility he ends up in. Let's hope not. He's probably going to get hit with a fine or something like that. Discharge of a weapon within a school zone, like district of a residential area, that can't be a jailable offense. I mean, like, especially considering the circumstances. The argument can be made that Frank Hassel was doing some bullshit, you know, doing some dickhattery, and Boogie felt threatened, you know? He's not exactly an imposing figure. Granted, like, facing down the barrel of a loaded gun, you can make the argument that, you know, he was in full control of the situation, but, you know, the guy just wants to be left alone at the end of the day, and Frank had been going above and beyond, like, you know, internet stalking and harassment and just, you know, really badgering Boogie when Boogie just wanted to be, you know, left alone, you know, done with. He wanted to retreat back and make, you know, his usual YouTube content. And, like, the fact that Frank Hassel, like, just felt the need to go above and beyond and, like, continue, like, you know, attacking Boogie any chance that he got shows that the guy had some sort of a vendetta against Boogie. And it's like, and the fact that he came to Boogie's house in Virginia. I think he lives in Abingdon. There's an Abingdon in Maryland, by the way, so that's why, like, I just couldn't help but kind of pause for a second. But yeah, I'm kind of sympathizing with Boogie here. Like, yes, he did kind of make a clear threat to Frank, but, like, I don't know. He didn't ever showcase, like, a willingness to carry through it. It's like, it was more of a defensive threat. It's like, if you ever show up on my property, I will gut you like a fish. Like, he wasn't saying that he was going to track Frank to his home and, like, kill him Liam Neeson style or anything like that. So it was like, hey, if you ever show up here, you are not welcome here. I am going to fucking put you in the ground. That's like, you know, telling somebody, stay the fuck away. Frank didn't stay the fuck away. He went over there. He knew what Boogie said, and in spite of that, he was like, he was going to do stuff. The problem is, Boogie should have probably just stayed indoors and called the cops and just let them take care of it, you know what I mean? That wasn't really something for him to go out there and have a shootout at the OK Corral with his loaded gun, you know, willing to have a shootout with Frank. Frank was not armed at the time, I do not believe, and all he had was his, you know, whatever recording equipment that he was using to take pictures and video, but yeah, that's where we stand. And oof, yeah, watch that sometime. You know, it's interesting. I like, it's weird seeing Boogie in that sort of situation, like, I have to say, because you don't really think these sorts of things can happen to you in real life. But yeah, how would you handle it? Like, I certainly would not invite you guys to step out on your front porch with a loaded gun and threaten any passerby that happened to come to your house. But I guess it really depends on the local laws and the, you know, statutes on the books locale. But, you know, for the most part, we have what's called castle doctrine. That means if Frank, hypothetically speaking, tried to break into Boogie's house and, like, got in and sort of approached Boogie, and Boogie felt threatened, then he'd be legally allowed to, like, shoot Frank where he stood, assuming that Frank showed a reasonable, like, capability of causing, you know, bodily harm to Boogie. I'm not sure of the laws in Virginia per se, but I'm just saying, like, generally speaking, that's, you know, for the most part, nationally accepted as castle doctrine. Whether or not you agree with the law, that's up to you. I'm just saying that, generally speaking, I know for one thing, if somebody was breaking into my house and they had a gun, I'd probably shoot the bastard where they stand. But after calling the police, and the police didn't get there yet, just for that clarification, but that's just me. I know a lot of people would like to say what they would do in a situation when the situation actually happens. Well, that's about the time for you to piss your pants and shit your pants in some cases. But yeah. Rest in peace, Boogie. I hope he gets out of this, relatively scot-free. I hope this whole thing gets cleared up. I have to say, it was kind of uplifting to see a lot of the internet community express, sympathy for Boogie, that he's still a sympathetic figure, and that they didn't cast him off as that weird drunken uncle that, some people have been sort of treating him like over the past few years. But, it goes without saying that Boogie seems to have been through a lot online, and that affected his content, that affected the ability of him to keep himself calm and collected and, in full range of his mental faculties. And everyone's got a breaking point. Everyone has their limits, and in the face of, I guess, deteriorating circumstances and conditions by which that you expected to sort of, you're going to change. Sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. I would say in Boogie's case, there was a hint of bitterness about him. And I'm not trying to condemn him or anything like that or shit on him. I'm just saying that, there was that sort of maniacal glint in his eyes in some of the more recent videos he's been making, and sort of a underlying bitterness. And people had made the comparison between Boogie going the way of Chris Chan. I don't think it's quite that bad yet, but after this, we can wait and see. It's certainly been a wild and crazy circus, and we're about to see how crazy this monkey cage is going to get. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoy the video. Check out Boogie sometime if you're interested in seeing what kind of content that he offers. Largely gaming, but also mixed in with other things that are, I guess the bread and butter of what internet culture is all about. But it might not be for you, especially his more recent stuff. But if you want to look into his past history about Gamergate, that's sort of my introduction to how I learned of who Boogie was and what he was all about. Obviously, Gamergate was several years ago, so things have changed a little bit since those times. But yeah, till next time, guys, take care and peace. I hope you all have a better one.